The piercing sound of the alarm horn echoed through the damp corridors of the prison. The shadows of the horned guards grew larger and larger against the stone walls. In the dark cell, Lyra, with trembling hands, pulled a small vial from her apothecary robe. Lyra whispered, "Don't move. This mixture melts steel, and your flesh and bones with it." Kael, with a weak but surprised voice, said, "You're destroying your life for a monster." Lyra poured drops of the acid onto the lock and stared into his eyes. "You are not a monster. Now be quiet." The sizzling sound of acid, thick smoke rose, and with a heavy strike, the chains shattered. They quietly slipped out of the cell, trying to escape unseen in the shadows. But the darkness and the labyrinth of corridors left them disoriented. Suddenly, the light of a guard's torch illuminated their faces. The guard shouted, "There they are! The spy is escaping, kill them!" Elven soldiers attacked with drawn spears. Kael pushed Lyra back. "Stay behind me." Despite his wounds and the exhaustion of torture, barehanded, with the fury of a young centaur warrior, he clashed with the soldiers. A spear tore through his arm. Kael let out a roar of pain, but did not stop. He lifted a soldier and slammed him into the wall, clearing a path to escape. They broke out of the dungeon. Soldiers sounded their horns in pursuit, but Kael and Lyra disappeared into the dark alleys of Silverpine. Lyra took him straight to her home. Her mother froze upon seeing them, and the centaur's blood-soaked face leaning against the wall. "Gods of the forest, what have you done? You said you were going to the library. Out of which book did you pull this centaur?" Lyra rushed to the medicine cabinet. "I couldn't let him die, mother. His name is Kael. He's a good centaur. If I hadn't helped him, Vaelin would have killed him. We have to go." Kael offered an innocent, awkward smile, but her mother continued to stare at him in shock and fear. Lyra quickly explained the situation, adding that if they were caught, both would be killed. Her mother, with tear-filled eyes and trembling hands, took her husband's leather bag from the mantel. She packed it with as much food and medicine as it could hold, dropped her own necklace inside, and handed it to Lyra. "Your father was just as stubborn. Take this. This way your father and I will always be with you. The forest is ruthless, but staying in this city means death. Just go, Lyra, go." Then with strict authority, the mother marched up to Kael, grabbed his ear, and pulled it hard. "Listen here, young centaur. If a single hair falls from my daughter's head, or if you get hungry in the middle of the night in the forest and eat her, or if any harm comes to her, I will find you myself and make horse stew out of you. Understood?" Kael, wide-eyed and terrified, stammered, Yes, of course, ma'am. Don't worry. I will protect her. Besides, I'm a vegetarian. Could you please let go of my ear?" Her mother gave him a threatening glare. Lyra intervened. "Don't worry, Mom, I'm not a child and he promised not to eat me." Her mother nodded. "Try to find Aunt May. You know, she travels with the nomads. You'll be safe with them. Maybe I'll come find you later." Lyra embraced her mother tightly, and they fled the city under the cover of night. But the Wolf Rider patrol, led by the Lord of the Forest, Lord Vaelin, were hot on their trail. Lyra looked back in panic. "They're catching up to us." Without a word, Kael lifted Lyra onto his back. "We can move faster this way." Kael ran with all his might. The thundering of his hooves and his heavy labored breathing filled the forest. Against all odds, they managed to leave the cavalry behind. They reached a wooden bridge over a river. Kael was completely drained of energy. Lyra gasped. "We lost them. We can rest for a moment now." They were just about to catch their breath when, from the depths of the dark forest, the glowing red eyes and deep snarl of a giant wolf emerged from the trees. Lord Vaelin had found them. Mounted on his monstrous wolf, Vaelin drew his elven sword and sneered. "Did you really think you could escape me, little elf? And you brought this filthy half-beast into our sacred woods? What a pity your father was killed in the war by this creature's kind." Kael struggled to his feet, shielding Lyra with his body. "Your problem is with me. Let her go." Vaelin laughed wickedly. "Tonight you'll both be wolf food." A brutal battle erupted among the trees. Kael shoved Lyra out of harm's way just as Vaelin's sword slashed across his side. But in a split second, pushing through the agony, Kael threw his entire weight forward and smashed his heavy fist directly into Vaelin's face. Vaelin was knocked off his mount. But the savage wolf lunged at Kael, tearing into him with its claws. With a devastating kick to the beast's head, Kael sent the wolf crashing into a tree, knocking it unconscious. Lord Vaelin staggered to his feet and swiftly landed several more slashes on Kael. Kael had no strength left to resist. His hoof slipped on a bloody stone, and he collapsed. Vaelin raised his blade for the killing strike, when suddenly Lyra swung a thick wooden branch, smashing it hard against the back of Vaelin's head. Vaelin lost his balance, dropping his sword, but retaliated with a vicious backhand to Lyra's face, throwing her to the dirt. Vaelin and Kael, both barely conscious, grappled on the ground. Vaelin drew his dagger, but Kael lunged forward, headbutting Vaelin with all his remaining strength. The sound of shattered bone echoed through the forest in the chaotic struggle. The dagger was driven deep into Vaelin's own side. The elven lord, his face a ruined bloody mess, collapsed to the ground. Lyra scrambled to her feet, helped Kael up, and together they fled into the heart of the dark forest. They pushed as far as their broken bodies would allow, finally taking refuge in a hidden cave among the rocks. Throughout the night, Lyra desperately tended to Kael's wounds. Her healing skills saved his life. The next morning, having finally put enough distance between themselves and Silverpine, they emerged onto a pristine, vibrant green plain. They rested beneath the shade of an ancient, towering tree. Lyra had never seen such a place before, and was mesmerized by its beauty. Lyra opened her father's bag, mixed a fresh salve, and applied it to Kael's side. "Hold still, this might sting a little." Kael, gritting his teeth through the pain, stared down at Lyra's hands. "Our shamans always told us that elves were heartless spirits who turned our plains to ash. But your hands, they only heal." Lyra let out a small laugh. "And they're quite soft, too." Then her smile faded into a bitter smirk. "And they taught us that your kind drinks elven blood. But yesterday, you saved my life. This whole war, it's just one massive lie." Kael stared off into the horizon, a lie written in blood, and neither of us even knows when or why it started. Lyra's gaze fell upon the leather bag. "My father was killed in this war. He was an incredible healer. He just wanted to save people from dying on the battlefield. He stitched this bag himself. It was the only thing that made it back." Tears streamed down Lyra's cheeks. Kael's face softened with sorrow. I am deeply sorry. I understand the pain. I was just a child when I lost my parents to the war. My grandfather raised me. I owe my life to him." As they spoke, Kael absent-mindedly ran his large finger over the bag's metal bird-shaped buckle, gently turning the bird's wings. Suddenly, the false bottom of the bag slid open, revealing a hidden compartment. Shocked, Lyra reached inside with trembling fingers and pulled out an old wax-sealed letter. She broke the seal. It was her father's handwriting.
"My dearest Lyra, if you are reading this letter, it means I never made it back home. On the front lines, at the Battle of Westwood, so many soldiers from both sides perished. I was wounded in one of the skirmishes, but I used that as a cover to do what had to be done. Forgive me for hiding the truth from you and your mother. My Lyra, this war between elves and centaurs is nothing but a bloody spectacle, a distraction. A dark shadow is pulling the strings, controlling the leaders of both races like puppets for a far more sinister purpose. In the heart of the forest battlefield, I witnessed something beyond belief, a presence that drives people to absolute madness. I set out to find the root of this corruption. It appears to be ancient, cursed, and unnatural, a substance that rots the mind. I am following its trail to stop it before it devours our entire world. Trust no one in the Elven Council. Our true enemy is not the centaur race. Something far greater and far more dangerous threatens us all. I do not know its exact source, perhaps the plains of the Dabras Riders or the freezing peaks of Vulcanheim. Stay strong, my daughter, I love you."
A heavy silence fell over them both. Lyra, her eyes wide and brimming with tears, pressed the letter against her chest. "He's not dead. My father is alive. I know he put himself in danger. I have to find him." Kael pushed himself up, resting his massive hand gently on Lyra's shoulder. The Dabrus Plains and the mountains of Vulcanheim are thousands of leagues away. We need to start at Westwood. It's the last place he was seen. We might find a clue there. If your father is out there, I will take you to him." Lyra and Kael's eyes met, a shared resolve burning between them. This was no longer just a desperate escape. This was the beginning of a grand adventure to uncover the darkest secret of their world. We return to the murky depths of the Elven forest. Heavy rain pours from the sky. Lord Vaelin's motionless body lies broken in the deep mud. Blackened blood drips from his ruined eye and crushed face onto the soil. An eerie, absolute silence grips the forest, when suddenly Vaelin's armored fingers twitch and scrape against the mud, and his remaining, intact eye snaps open, filled with a demonic, maddened fury, pulsating with streaks of a strange, unknown glowing light. Subscribe and ring the bell to never miss a tale. Share this lore with your fellow adventurers. Farewell until we meet again.